At age 45, Chris Downey had pretty much constructed the life he'd always wanted. An architect with a good job at a small housing firm outside San Francisco, he was happily married with a 10-year-old son. He was an assistant Little League coach, an avid cyclist. And then doctors discovered a tumor in his brain. He had surgery, and the tumor was safely gone. But Downey was left completely blind. As we first reported in early 2019, what he has done in the decade and a half since losing his sight, as a person and as an architect, can only be described as a different kind of vision.
The story will continue in a moment.
Several mornings a week, as the sun rises over the Oakland estuary in California, an amateur rowing team works the water. It's hard to tell which one of them is blind, and Chris Downey thinks that's just fine.
It's really exciting to be in a sport where nobody looks in the direction they're going. You're faced this way in the boat, and you're going that way. So, okay, even Steven.
We were just talking about that whole exterior.
It's not exactly even Steven in this design meeting, where Downey is collaborating with sighted architects on a new hospital building.
Under the canopy where you can have downlights.
But he hasn't let that stop him.
Here you are in a profession that basically requires you to read designs and draw designs. You must have thought in your head, that is insurmountable.
No.
You never thought,
I never thought that.
You never thought the word
actually,
insurmountable.
Lots of people, friends that were architects, and anybody else would say, oh my God, it's the worst thing imaginable, to be an architect and to lose your sight. I can't imagine anything worse. But I quickly came to realize that the creative process is an intellectual process. It's how you think. So it just needed new tools.
New tools? Downey found a printer that could emboss architectural drawings so that he could read and understand through touch.
They look like normal prints, normal drawings on the computer, but then they just come out in tactile form.
So it is like Braille, isn't it?
Right.
And he came up with a way to sketch his ideas onto the plans using a simple children's toy, malleable wax sticks that he shapes to show his modifications to others. And he says something surprising started to happen. He could no longer see buildings and spaces, but he began hearing them.
The sounds, the textures, and the sound changes because there's a canopy overhead.
You can sense that we're under a canopy?
Yes. It's all a matter of how the sound works from the tip of the cane.
I was fascinated walking through buildings that I knew sighted, but I was experiencing them in a different way. I was hearing the architecture. I was feeling the space.
It sounds as if you began almost enjoying, in a way, being the blind architect.
Sort of this excitement of, I'm a kid again. I'm relearning so much of architecture. It wasn't about what I'm missing in architecture. It was about what I had been missing in architecture.
Is that sufficiently different?
Oh, yeah.
Chris Downey's upbeat attitude doesn't mean that he didn't go through one of the most frightening experiences imaginable and struggle. He and his wife Rosa were living in this same home with their son Renzo, then 10, when Downey first noticed a problem while playing catch with Renzo. The ball kept coming in and out of sight. The cause turned out to be a tumor near his optic nerve. Surgery to remove it lasted 9.5 hours. He says his surgeon had told him there was a slight risk of total sight loss, but that he'd never had it happen.
When he first came out of surgery, he was able to see.
But then things started to go wrong. The next day, half his field of vision disappeared. And then...
The next time I woke up, it was all gone. It was just black.
Complete and total darkness. No light, you can't see
No light.
anything.
It's dark. It's all dark.
After days of frantic testing, a surgeon told him it was permanent, irreversible, and sent in a social worker.
She said, oh, and I see from your chart you're an architect, so we can talk about career alternatives.
Career alternatives.
Yeah.
Right away.
I'd been told I was officially blind for 24 hours.
And she's saying you can't be an architect
And she
anymore.
was saying we can talk about career alternatives. So I felt like these walls were being built up around me. Just like, yeah, you're getting boxed in.
Alone that night in his room, Downey did some serious thinking about his son and about his own father, who had died from complications after surgery when Downey was 7 years old.
I could quickly appreciate the wonder, the joy of, I'm still here.
It was actually joy?
Yeah, it's like, I'm still here with my family. My son still has his dad.
You know, your eyes
So-
are tearing up. You know that.
Yeah. Sorry. It's, I always have a hard time talking through that.
He knew that how he handled this would send a strong message to Renzo.
I had been talking with him about the need to really apply himself. At the age of 10, it's that point where if you want something, you really have to work at it. And here I am, facing this great challenge.
So, motivated to set an example, he headed back to work only 1 month later.
This was the most healthy thing about Chris.
Brian Bashan is executive director of the nonprofit Lighthouse for the Blind and Visually Impaired in San Francisco, and is blind himself.
He waited a few days until the stitches were out of his skull, and 30 days after brain surgery, he was back in the office thinking, okay, there got to be a way to figure this out, and I'm going to figure it out.
Bashan's organization, the Lighthouse, helps people new to vision loss learn how to figure things out.
Let's try the first line.
When someone becomes blind, the odds are 99% they've never met another blind person.
Is that right?
Yeah, that really is true. Blind people need those role models. How to be blind, how to hold down a job, how to live an independent life.
Specifically, how to work in the kitchen safely,
Good morning.
how to navigate public transportation, how to use screen reading software to listen to emails as quickly as the rest of us read them.
Did you understand that?
Yes.
No.
And most critically, how to get around in the world alone. Downey learned that at the Lighthouse.
When you first crossed a big street like this on your own,
Yeah,
was it terrifying?
that is absolutely terrifying.
I can imagine. I can totally imagine.
I remember that day that stepping off the curb, you would have thought I was stepping into raging waters. Take a deep breath and go for it. You got to push through it.
Within a few months, he was traveling the streets on his own and getting back to normalcy with his son.
The first Father's Day came up. Rosa was like, so what do you want to do? You want to go on a picnic, go on a nice lunch? I want to play baseball with Renzo. And Renzo was like, he pops up. I could feel him like jump to the edge of his chair. Baseball? You want to play baseball?
So Dad would throw to me, and I'd play like I was playing first base.
How could he throw the ball to you?
I'd just call out, "I'm over here,"
Yeah, there you go.
and he'd point, and I'd say, "Yeah, that's right," and then he'd throw it at me.
But that's something I really loved about our relationship. He quickly was looking for possibilities. He wasn't saying you can't do that. He was like, well, why not?
All right, here we go.
Downey seems to have a knack for finding windows when doors slam shut. Just 9 months after going blind, the recession hit, and he lost his job. But he got word that a nearby firm was designing a rehabilitation center for veterans with sight loss. They were eager to meet a blind architect. What are the chances?
You had to believe that God's hand came down.
It took my disability and turned it upside down. All of a sudden, it defined unique, unusual value that virtually nobody else had to offer.
Nobody.
Yeah.
Starting with that job, Downey developed a specialty, making spaces accessible to the blind. He helped design a new eye center for Duke University Hospital, consulted on a job for Microsoft, and signed on to help the visually impaired find their way in San Francisco's new 4-block-long Salesforce Transit Center, which we visited during construction.
If you're blind, you don't drive, all right? You don't like it when we drive. So, we're committed transit users. So the question was, how on earth do you navigate this size of facility if you're blind?
His solution? Grooves set into the concrete running the entire length of the platform.
Now we'll just follow this, following those grooves.
With a subtle change from smooth to textured concrete to signal where to turn to get to the escalators.
Would you like to give it a try?
Okay. I know to go straight because of this line, and I feel, oh my, so it's pretty obvious.
I can hear
Really
the difference from here.
It's something sighted people may never notice, and that's precisely the point. Downey believes in what's called universal design, that accommodates people with disabilities, but is just as appealing to people without them. It's the approach he used for his biggest project yet, consulting on the total renovation of a new 3-story office space for his old training ground, the Lighthouse for the Blind.
Coming into blindness need not be some dreary social service experience, but rather more like coming into an Apple store, thinking that there might be something fun around the corner.
One of Downey's ideas was to break through and link the 3 floors with an internal staircase that sighted people can see and the blind can hear.
In blindness, it's so wonderful to be on the 9th floor and hear a burst of laughter up on the 11th floor, or to hear somebody playing the piano on the 10th floor.
For the hallways, Downey chose polished concrete because of the acoustics.
I can hear the special tap of somebody's cane or the click of a guide dog's toenails.
Click of a dog's toenail?
Yeah.
Well, is that good or bad?
That's great. It's like you're seeing somebody coming down the hall. I know the sound of individual people who work here by the way they use their cane or the kind of walk they have.
You can really distinguish between people by how they tap their cane.
Absolutely.
If you hadn't had Chris working on this building, a blind architect,
it wouldn't have been as rich or so subtle, for sure.
Spring 2018 marked the 10-year anniversary of Downey losing his sight. So what did he do? He threw a party, a fundraiser for the Lighthouse, where he's been student, architect, and president of the board.
Maybe a slightly bizarre thing, celebrating my 10-year blind birthday. But when you're 55 and you have a chance to be 10 again, you take it.
I get the feeling that you actually think you're a better architect today.
I'm absolutely convinced I'm a better architect today than I was sighted. To the north, okay.
If you could see tomorrow, would you still want to be able to feel the design?
If I were to get my sight back, it would be, I don't know. I would be afraid that I'd sort of lose what I've really been working on. I don't really think about having my sight restored. There's be some logistical liberation to it, but will it make my life better? I don't think so.
Chris Downey continues to have a thriving architecture practice, helping design museums and campuses for the blind and visually impaired. He's still rowing, and this past semester taught a graduate architecture course at UC Berkeley.